Hello and welcome to Tools in the Shed, a podcast powered by CarsGuide, ready to rip into car stuff that has caught our eye this week. I'm James, and with me is Chesto.
Howdy, folks.
Who's been working on his pickup lines. And Crafty, who's been
Hello.
focusing all his mental energy, a green power source, if ever there was one,
Yes.
on going off-grid, off the highway.
Yes.
And we'll update you on the man who suggests we humans are actually existing in another civilization's video game in this week's MuskWatch. So stay with us. But first of all, we've had some feedback, which is terrific as always.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
And who else? Who else but Crafty? What's your call? Who do you think's first cab off
His
the rank?
name might start with Hammer.
Hammer
And
rocks.
with rocks?
Hammer rocks.
Says,
Good on
is
you.
it
Get on
ju-
your mate.
He says, is it just me, or does the new Great Wall Ute look like a Toyota Tacoma or Tundra? Or is it a Toyota Kluger? And for people listening, watching in the US, that's Highlander. And Ford Ranger had a child, so a love child. between those two.
With a little, and let's say the Navara was the postman
Yeah.
then, because I think there's a little bit of that in there as well.
But Hammer's not
That's
the
right.
only person who've said
Navarro
that.
was
There's
the
been
midwife.
numerous people that we've got feedback from that have drawn that line between the Tundra, Tacoma kind of.
It is
line.
unlike the Chinese car companies to,
How
use
should we put it?
inspiration
shall
in
we
that
say,
way.
be
How
inspired.
should we put it? Yeah. Creatively borrow.
Wax 333 says,
Waxy.
could I suggest a review of the microcars such as the Yaris, Picanto, MG3, Mazda 2, 120, i20, Ignis, etc. So I went to our Comparo guru, being Maddie M4 Campbell, and his response is, look, we've done the Yaris and Accent, Mazda 2 and Polo as a comparison. So
Yep.
there's 4 good ones covered off there. The Hyundai i20 no longer sold in Australia, so that's a bit of a
That's
challenge. And MG won't give us an MG3. You know, anyone's guess as to why they won't give us one of those, but that's proved a struggle. And we won't buy one because I don't think that's good use of our petty cash.
Nope.
Ignis and Picanto, he says, perhaps stay tuned. So there might be
there
something
you
on that
go.
front. So not exactly what you're after, Wax 333, but if you piece those bits together, it might get close. And also, Matt Murdoch, who's a new commenter, says, enjoying your podcast, keep them coming. I must get myself one of those Nuke Mars shirts. So that's
Oh,
that's
yeah, the musky
It
shirts.
says the
There you
Nuke
go.
Mars shirt, and he gives us a smiley face. So thank you
nice
very
one.
much, Matt.
Just
And
watch for the build quality
in your
on those
absence,
shirts.
Crafty, too, we had more support for you as a spokesperson for Keep Australia Beautiful.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Excellent.
So
oh, good.
that's actually gathering pace.
Is that a campaign I should, I
You should probably
take
get on
We
board?
want to see you on a billboard, Crafty.
Yeah, oh, nice. Yeah.
Now,
But
Chesto,
legally this time.
your pickup lines, you're sharpening them, but
Yes.
tell us what that really means.
So I like to start with, did it hurt when you fell from heaven? No,
Yes.
we'll talk about pickup trucks, of course, and we're in an amazing time in Australia. Not just with pickup trucks, but with American cars in general. Do you remember not so long ago we were crying out for things like Mustangs, Camaros? Now we seem to have everything, and even a Corvette coming too.
And more, yep.
And more. And that includes, of course, pickup trucks. So Ram kind of led the charge with the local conversion of the 1500 and 2500, I think, here in Australia.
yeah.
Chevrolet followed suit with the Silverado. But mostly it's the success of the Ram that has not gone unnoticed by the major car companies. And so there are five car companies now talking about introducing American-style jumbo pickup trucks. So I'll go through them quickly in order for you and just tell you a little bit about where we're
And
at
really,
with
it's
that
interesting,
process.
isn't it, that pickup has found its way into the local lexicon. because
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really defines that line
Yeah.
between what we traditionally say is a ute
Yep.
and then the big, like a big ute.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We've picked up the lingo as well as the design.
That's
for
right.
the
Yeah.
actual
Well, it
product.
started a few years ago with SUV, didn't it? I
Yeah,
mean, that
yeah,
was
yeah.
a
That's
that was
right.
a sort of American term.
And side topic for a moment, a few years ago I drove a Silverado that had been converted by someone else, not HSV. And I remember thinking to myself, this will never work here. They're too big, they're too difficult to park.
Pretty
you could never
unwieldy.
use them in the
Yeah.
city. Like
Yep.
they are just too big for
Yeah.
Australia's infrastructure.
Yeah.
Turns out I was entirely wrong.
Wouldn't be the first time.
on that point. And no, not for the first time I've admitted it, which is something.
Yeah, there was just to jump in really quickly. There was a massive and probably still is grey import market for those things.
Yeah, yeah.
You always see a fair few around, cart and horse trailers,
Yeah,
tradies,
yeah.
whatever else. But now, it's really picking up.
Meaning
that
that it's the small volume manufacture.
yeah, absolutely, and there would
left
be
to right-hand drive
and there would be
converters,
mobs
yeah.
in Brisbane and Melbourne and
Yeah,
Sydney that would
Performax was a
convert
big
them
one,
to
I think,
right-hand
for a
drive.
while
and,
up in Gympie.
yeah, absolutely.
So we'll kick off with the one that I think is probably going to arrive first, and that is the Nissan Titan. Now, I say that because Nissan has made absolutely no secret of just how much they want this car in Australia. They've been talking about it now probably for about 12 months. And the conversation began with, yep, we're pushing for right-hand drive from factory. We want this car in Australia. We really think there's a market that'll go well. Those conversations obviously fell slightly on deaf ears in the States. So that conversation has now shifted to we're investigating local conversion centres.
So I take it Tundra is built in the US.
Correct. Yeah. That's correct.
Yep.
Titan, you mean?
Oh, Titan. Beg your pardon. Sorry, Titan.
So they'll be the first one to lob, you reckon, in numbers?
They are certainly the ones championing it a bit more than any others, and so much so that, and again, this is credit to Ram, the success of that and the success of the remanufacturing process has basically inspired other manufacturers to say, well, if they're not going to do it, we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah.
So that process is ongoing, but you heard it here first. I think that will be the very first to arrive. Now, the second... Think about the poor guys from HSV for a moment. They're doing Ram at the same facility, the Ram 1500, which is selling, through the roof basically.
Yeah.
On the same lines, they're doing the bigger Chevy Silverados, not the 1500s, which haven't captured the imagination quite so much as the Ram 1500. So it was only a matter of time before they went, well, hang on a second, Chevrolet does a Silverado 1500 too. Why don't we bring that in? So this is all kind of sourced stuff off the record.
Yeah, so you're making it up.
Basically. No,
Chesto's deep throat.
But
Excuse me?
Sorry.
I've seen the video. It's pretty awesome.
You've seen the billboard. So Chevrolet is now actively investigating the Silverado 1500 to launch in Australia. It seems like an absolute no-brainer. They're already remanufacturing them here anyway. 1500 is the size it seems to sing here. Only a matter of time before that vehicle comes as well.
Yep.
Now we move on from there to Ford in Australia, who says they too are willing to look at the Ford F-150 here. F-150, of course, huge selling vehicle around the world. I believe it's still the best-selling vehicle on the planet, isn't it?
In the US, it's
absolutely.
I'm sure it's number one.
I think it might be number one globally, but don't hold me to that, dear viewer.
I might have an argument with Corolla or some others there.
Also a possibility.
Yeah.
Well,
but it's got to be up there. It's got to be up there.
We're going to use the magic of technology to have something on the back of the screen at some point that'll confirm that.
Anyway, so
I'm going to quote Ford's Australian marketing manager here, Danny Winter, who says that I think if customers in Australia go that way, then we would absolutely bring one in. We've had full-size pickups here before when they were available in right-hand drive. Now, there's no right-hand drive full-size pickup at the moment, but when there is, or if there is, we will look at it and see if there is demand for it here. We always research products before we bring them in, etc. We did that with Mustang, and even though we researched it, it still blew our minds away. So Mustang for them was a kind of, I guess, a toe in the water of American vehicles here. And if you speak to Ford or anyone else for that matter, they were absolutely staggered by the success of that car. They knew it would go well, but I think all of us were a bit surprised by how much pent-up demand there was for Mustang.
The other thing to consider with that is the Rouge plant where that F-150 is built is a sophisticated operation.
There you go.
So in terms of being able to slot a different configuration of the truck in, I reckon they're in luck. That if anywhere was capable of doing it, it would be there.
But the flip side of that argument is that those trucks, some of them particularly, are so popular in the States that they say, well, why? We're at
how
capacity.
Are we going to do that?
Why would we do this?
That's a great point.
So that's actually the issue with Ram. The reason sort of some of the Ram delays, Ram cars have been delayed is because they're selling through the roof in the States. They're not allocating any to us. Anyway, next on the list, the Toyota Tundra. Now, this is a cool truck, and in fact, the Tundra has some sort of distinction in the States because it's one of the few not sort of Detroit Big Three trucks that has a bit of a cult following in America. That is an almost impossible market to crack. It's like the Falcon Commodore market at its peak, but on steroids. But the Tundra is one of the ones that does have a bit of a following. Now, we were there at the New York Motor Show where we spoke to the group's North American Group Vice President, Mr. Jack Hollis, who told us that he's desperate for that car to go global. They're currently, and now it's not available in right-hand drive at the moment, but, and I quote, "We're working on a next-generation Tundra, and I cannot wait to show it to you. We have a great relationship with Australia. We'd love to see that car go global. Australia does fantastic work," etc. Now, double that with Toyota in Australia saying, of course, if that car becomes available in right-hand drive, it's on the cards for us. They're looking at it too. So, again, that's a bit of a waiting game for that new Tundra to be revealed. But when it is, if that has that dual possibility of left and right-hand drive, then that's got to be a sure starter for us.
To your point on the Tundra having cracked that nut in terms of acceptance and getting a following in the big pickup market, Toyota, I think, more broadly has done such a great job of establishing itself in American culture. Things like NASCAR, making big trucks, data I've seen shows that a lot of Americans think Toyota is an American
Oh,
brand.
there you go. Yeah.
So the manufacturing presence, all of that stuff.
Yep. And look, it's not in the same league in terms of sales as things like the Ford, of course, but in terms of the outsiders, it's probably got the biggest following, you'd have to say. So now we go down to a last but not least, I suppose, is probably the Furphy one. So the
Furphy?
the maybe.
Is that
The Furphy 100.
That's
it's the Jeep Furphy.
Good unit.
The new GM Furphy. So this is coming from the Holden people at their Colorado launch, basically, and that they too see the market here. And I quote, "There is definitely a market in Australia. We're already in it with HSV, and we're currently evaluating a lot of things. Everything's on a business case. We evaluate lots of different things on business cases, lots of different products. At the moment, we have the Chevrolet brand in Australia through HSV. That's where we are at the moment. So we need to kind of read through the lines there a little bit. But remember, GM has a fairly significant truck portfolio in the States.
Oh, yeah.
GMC Sierra 1500, GMC Canyon, etc. So
got a big lineup.
and so much current Holden SUV product is, out of the States.
And the other interesting thing about that is we know now that, I think we know now anyway, if we don't, I'll write a news story about it, that the Corvette has been confirmed that it's not going to wear any Holden badging whatsoever. It's just going to be a Corvette product. So with the death of local manufacturing in Australia, Holden clearly is open to the idea of broadening their portfolio to the other sub-brands.
And as I think I mentioned to you, Chesto, the branding in Germany, for example, on GM dealerships carries Chevrolet, carries Opel, carries the V, like the winged V with the checker flag on one for Corvette.
So there you go.
There are any number of ways of managing all of that as a retail presence.
Exactly. So short answer is this. Some of those are more certain than others. The Nissan is an absolute sure starter, as I think is the Silverado 1500. But one thing is absolutely certain. The big truck invasion of Australia has really only just begun. Yeah. And if you are a fan of big trucks, credit to Ram, who were really the canary down the coal mine on this one and proved that there was a market.
Yeah,
and
they really broke the
them.
ground, didn't they?
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
Really the thing is with these, you can't write them off as a novelty or a sort of status symbol, because these things are heavy haulers, like serious towing platforms. And for grey nomads and anyone who's got a property and they need to move, massive things around. They're very appealing.
It's halfway house to a prime mover, and I think it was International that had a truck that was essentially a prime mover. It was. Okay, again, due to the magic of technology, for those viewing, we'll have a pic of it up behind us. But that's where you start to get into a real Frankenute.
Is that a new one?
The
Frankenute. Alongside the Furphy.
I've come about circle on them though. I think I used to think, they've got no, as I said, they've got no place here in Australia really. But when I see them now, I think, that's actually pretty cool.
Where else are you going to put your gun rack, Chesto?
Now, Crafty, we'll move. Thank you very much, Chesto.
Pleasure.
We will move on, and you've been pondering the notion of electric power for vehicles in the Australian context.
Well, I've been lurking around in the dark depths of campsites. I've been lurking in the shrubbery.
Yes, and you've had your electric gadgets with you.
My personal electric gadgets.
Oh, that's horrifying.
It's horrifying for me, especially when they short out. It's one of those things, and we did touch on it recently, and I think it's one of these things that we all have to get used to, as well as, big unit trucks coming. We've got to get used to the idea that electric vehicles are the way of the future. There are always massive question marks raised whenever anyone says, there's an electric SUV or off-roader coming or whatever. There's always question marks about range anxiety. Are we going to have the infrastructure to support them? How capable are they actually going to be? I mean, but we've towed with, just as an example,
Model X, was it Model X?
Yeah, the Tesla Model X,
and
unreal. I mean, off the shoe sort of torque, just instantaneous, and that's towing something massive. You apply that that torque to an off-roading situation, and unreal.
It was a big double axle caravan.
That's right. Yeah, it was almost 3 tons.
Sizable thing.
2,800, 2,900 kegs. Yeah. And I mean, so you can't question. So the technology's there. It's just getting it out to us, getting it on the ground, getting it tested properly. You know, like nowadays with utes and whatever, they'll do sort of real world testing out here on the roads to see how suspension holds up. Well, you'd want to do that same sort of extensive testing, but to see whether the sort of, I guess, the framework around the technology can hold up to serious corrugations, serious low-speed off-roading in extreme temperatures, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but Crafty,
having me spill a beer over it, whoops,
correct. But I think you'll agree with me on this, and I'm going to self-censor myself here, but there's a lot of bull beep that goes around this, because in much the same, not all off-roaders are built equal, right? So there are specialist vehicles for specialist jobs.
Absolutely,
so in much the same way that you're not going to cross the Simpson in an all-wheel drive CX-5, you might not cross, you might not cross the width of Australia in an electric off-roader.
Absolutely.
But if you're just heading into 100 k's into your national park and back, then I'm sure they'll be able to do the job just fine.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
I think these things will evolve over time. In that, yes, you can have a specialised vehicle. It becomes more niche in terms of what kind of vehicle is appropriate for this particular purpose. But then, from a commercial point of view, what remains viable? You know, if the vast majority of vehicles in the country are all electric powered, where are you going to get your fuel? All of a sudden it doesn't add up.
That's right.
To be selling fuel. So those factors do start to play a part down the track. Pardon the pun.
I mean, it's going to alter the landscape, and already is. SUVs, for want of a better term, but off-roaders, serious off-roaders, that's a bit of a way off.
You're not going to
at
go
the
up
moment.
the Tanami track with
exactly.
At the moment.
But I mean, they're coming. Along with the massive pickup trucks, it's all coming. So I think we've all got to sort of get into acceptance mode.
Yep.
And the idea is now, I guess, it's just a waiting game until those sort of levels of sophistication are developed, so we can have confidence in going a long way. Remote area touring, you're in an electric vehicle. Yeah. You're not going to have to stress out.
And the gap is, you're right. I mean, but the gap is consumer demand.
Yeah.
They can be made more
and
desirable.
Also consumer pushback. I mean, a lot of us are guilty of going, that doesn't have a bloody V8 in. I'm not interested, Not going to plug me bloody four-wheel drive in.
Crafty, this sounds like a ferociously Luddite thing to say, but there would still be a moment, I think, if I was in an EV off-roader and I was about to go through a fairly deep water crossing where I'd be like, do these two elements go together? How does this work?
It's true.
What happens here?
Sitting on a massive battery, bit of water.
And also, I mean, so many electric vehicles have the battery pack at the base of the car. It becomes almost a stress member in the frame that you wonder about the torsional rigidity of the thing.
Well, that's going to affect things like running clearance or ground clearance.
Absolutely.
Your approach and departure angles.
Well, that's the Rivian question mark for me. Because it's not an
insubstantial thing, is it, the batteries?
No, the Rivian philosophy is that skateboard. So all the batteries, in fact, all the key components of the car are all along the base of the car, right? So that would be a concern.
So if you're going through deep ruts immediately, that's going to be a problem.
Or sharp rocks or whatever.
So at the moment, what's your take on it, Crafty? It really, if you're going for the extreme stuff, it's not an option right now.
No, not that I can, not that I can tell.
But for towing and for other kind of SUV pursuits,
it's got
it's really
an
getting
application. No, absolutely, yeah. For recreational, weekend, you're taking a camper trailer away, a caravan or whatever.
Yes.
And we've already got the infrastructure. Like there's for those sort of trips.
That's right.
You're not driving 1,000 kilometres into the middle of nowhere.
No.
You're going up the east coast of
a
Australia.
Holiday camping trip is
and you
fine.
can get an app and you can check out where you can charge up and that sort of thing. Absolutely.
Exactly. And so some sort of mid-range off-highway work, fine. Your hardcore stuff, no.
No, not at the moment. And like Chesto says, that's something that's on its way. And people, the lion's share of people aren't going to buy them for remote area touring, are they? I mean, that's a real niche, but I mean, and it's something that the technology will.
In the Australian desert, solar power stands up pretty strongly.
Get a solar
There's a fair bit of sunshine out there.
A little bit of sun, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you,
Thanks,
Crafty. Now we are going to move from way out there to right in here, in the garage.
Oh.
Okay, so what has been in our garage during the week? Chesto, we'll kick off with you, and you have been in a French Grand Turismo.
Yes, that's correct.
GT.
Oui, JC.
It's actually Italian.
Yes, that's true as well, actually.
We.
Seaweed.
Seaweed. Seaweed.
Yes, so I have been in the Peugeot 308 GT, which is a pretty handy little, hatch. It's very good looking, very French, quite quirky in places, which is to be expected, I suppose. But it is quite a fun little car. But the interesting thing about it is, it allowed me to write a headline that I have never written before, and that is that Peugeot beats Porsche in Australia.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
So the Peugeot 308 now has the distinction of being the first car in Australia to offer a working PFF petrol particulate filter.
Wow.
PPF, I
that
should
to
say.
Crafty and the company.
Petrol particulate filter.
Yeah.
So you know what they are, of course. They're
Yeah,
little
yeah.
honeycomb mesh or filters that they basically trap the bad bits
Yeah.
before they can be
So Andrew
emitted.
had a little bit of trouble with the DPF. I believe.
Correct.
Yes.
And then the idea is that when things get hot enough, it burns them off into sort of less dangerous or relatively safe particles. That's the idea. Now, famously, Porsche earlier this year when it launched the 2020 Macan S made it quite a big song and dance about being the first car company in Australia to offer a petrol particulate filter that was attached to a 3-litre V6 engine that was going to be compliant with our uniquely high levels of sulphur in our fuel. It was quite a big deal. An even bigger deal then followed when they had to backtrack and say, actually, on closer inspection, it doesn't work. It doesn't work with our
no
fuel
good.
content.
Yeah,
so
no
for
good.
and for a lot of people, then we thought, well, that's obviously our fuel just won't work with this kind of technology. Enter Peugeot, who has developed in-house a system that in fact does work with our fuel. So our 95 RON fuel typically contains up to 50 parts per million of sulfur compared to 10 ppm parts per million in other countries. So that's a lot more sulfur,
Isn't it?
right?
Isn't it?
So basically the idea is that the GT hatches PPF will operate on our 95 RON and our high quality 98 RON, obviously, which,
That's great.
and I'm going to quote them here, they say
Pretty
it's robust to a fuel containing average 40 parts per million average, and thus can tolerate all premium grade fuel in Australia, but they have tested it up to 70 parts per million,
Okay,
so well above our
All right.
our average 50.
Yeah.
So anyway, the long and short of it is Peugeot wins the race. Petrol particulate
Fantastic.
filters are here.
Peugeot beats Porsche.
Why should you care? It's a turbocharged petrol engine that's quite fun and perky, but also has some kind of green credibility in the
Yeah,
background.
that is
so
a
it makes
great
you
feature.
feel
It's
good
great.
about driving it.
While you put your foot down, you're loving the environment.
Yeah, correct.
You're giving
That's
it
right.
a nice hug.
Well, you
a
said
nice,
correct.
I mean,
So
hug.
you're giving it a kick.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Or whatever.
Now, thank you, Chesto.
That's a pleasure.
We shall move on to yourself, Crafty. You've
Oh,
got
yeah.
3 bases to cover, so
Right, yeah.
a quick hop, step, and jump between
Oh, no,
each of
absolutely,
them.
yeah. I'll just race through them quickly. We did a comparison, off-road only, so nothing else, no towing, no, tours of libraries or pubs that I like to do when I go out. So off-road only, we had the Suzuki Jimny, the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, the Unlimited, so the new JL Wrangler, and the Ford Ranger Raptor.
Mm-hmm.
So all on paper at least, pretty capable four-wheel drives, promoted to be capable four-wheel drives. It was an eventful
Now, no
day.
spoilers. You
No,
want to
no
keep
spoilers.
Yeah, no
No,
spoilers.
absolutely no spoilers. At the end of the day, I was still of the opinion that they were all capable.
Yes.
We had lots of fun. We did some serious stuff. We actually went on a hill that the emergency services are trained on, remote area emergency services, as a make or break scenario.
Right.
So if you can get up there and get to the patients, all's well. If you can't, you're carrying your gear up.
It's also a clothes optional facility, is it not?
It is,
Crafty?
it is, and
Yeah.
I chose to go the optional. So there was a fair bit of slipping
You
and
were
sliding.
You were close.
When we were on some pretty serious sort of inclines and downhills, I was slipping around a fair bit.
But I thought it was brave
Yeah.
to go optional on the drive there too. A lot of people take them off when they get there. You did
Yeah,
it.
that's
At the,
I did it on the way there,
in
which
all
the police were a
seriousness-
little bit iffy about.
In all seriousness, it is a nudist retreat.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Well, this, and I mean, the part where we went is a separate four-wheel driver training facility.
Clothes mandatory.
Clothes absolutely necessary. Yeah. Some of those bushes are pretty spiky. I found out to my detriment.
You were lurking.
But they don't like to promote it because it's not open to the public. The driver training facility, you must book, you
Okay.
must pay,
Yep.
and you can only have it for your allotted time.
Yes.
But it's an unreal facility.
Cool.
It's over a massive property. Some great terrain, like variations, like water crossings, which can get pretty deep depending on the rain.
Yep. And you were telling me during the week, Crafty, it had quite a nice view in places too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. let's just say I've never been a big fan of beach volleyball until now.
So you've got three quite disparate offerings there, but each of them in their own way have a claim on terms of their off-road performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean the sizes. I mean physically, you put them side on, which we have in the yarn. So read my review coming up, my comparison review on CarsGuide.com.au. I'll say that again, carsguide.com.au. Okay. No, read the yarn on there, but you see the still images and the moving pictures, as old codgers like me like to call them, on the video.
Yeah.
The size disparity is pretty massive. Like you're going Jimny, small, Rubicon, a little bit bigger, medium, Raptor, pretty big.
Pretty big.
Raptor's got a wider wheel track than the Ranger. It's got a lot more wheel travel than the standard Ranger. There are a lot of interesting things that were thrown up, including rocks while we were driving.
Yeah, sure.
But a great day out. No one was injured.
No spoilers.
And all the vehicles did pretty well.
Good. No spoilers, but is the Jimny still sort of... I mean, there's not just a size difference, but a huge price difference there too. Is the Jimny still punching above its weight in terms of bang for bucks?
I think so. I mean, the whole test was about capability. That thing is so light, and it's got the necessary drivetrain, and it's got a small engine, 1.5 litre petrol. But that's more than enough to get it up, and driven with consideration and a bit of common sense. You can do most things.
Looking like more and more of a
safely.
bargain.
Absolutely.
Was much attention paid to tyre pressures, Crafty?
Absolutely,
I presume there was.
And did you take your garbage with you?
Exactly. You could have knocked out a quick PSA while you were there.
You could have filmed one on the spot, obviously from the waist up.
I knocked a couple of things out, but none of them were PSAs. No, it was. What was the question? I've forgotten. Tyre pressures. Yeah, absolutely. JC, we drove straight in. We dropped everything to 20
you
pounds.
Dropped everything.
Dropped everything.
And then
I reduced the tyre pressures.
Yeah.
No, we had everything down to PSI. We had everything down to 20 PSI, which is a pretty sort of good general all round. I adjusted things here and there depending on how they were going. It was quite wet. There'd been a fair amount of rain, so that extreme hill especially got pretty greasy and slippery.
Yeah. You do adjust tyre pressures in your spare time, don't you? I mean,
That's
you work your way up and down the street where you live and
absolutely,
just randomly adjust people's tyre pressures.
I do.
And
sometimes...
That's the fastest way to get them down, I find.
Yeah, that drops them fast.
Got to make sure I got the right Peugeot 308. Is that Chesto's thing? And I sometimes do that clothing optional as well.
Good.
So, yeah.
All right,
but
so that's something to look forward to or something to be terrified by. But
either way,
it's coming at you very shortly. I can tell you, I was driving a rather special car during this week. So, believe it or not, it's 30 years since the Mazda MX-5 first arrived at Miata in the States and other markets.
30 years.
So, that's flown by. And this one is bright orange. In fact, it's called Racing Orange. 3,000 of them have been produced for global consumption. 30 of them come into Australia.
Wow.
We had number 219.
Oh, wow.
Was the one that was in the garage.
Oh, cool.
49,990 Australian dollars before you've put it on the road. And it's based on the manual 2-litre Roadster. You get some Rays alloy wheels, really cool alloy wheels. You get orange Brembo front calipers. I wasn't aware of this brand, Nissan rear calipers, but Nissin, which is a motorsport-focused company. So those calipers on the back, little badge, and you get the Recaros, but with great orange piping around the seats. It's all rather special. And it coincides with the rollout of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on all Mazdas.
Yeah.
So this thing has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And it was just typically fun MX-5 driving experience. And the things that stood out for me is just the beautiful simplicity of that soft roof. In that, forget electric motors, forget complexity. You can, from the driver's seat, simply reach over. Well, very easy to drop it. Undo one clip, push it backwards, click, it goes into place.
Give yourself a Yeah.
Yes, Crafty.
well, that's
And
certainly one way of
it's
looking at
very easy also to flick the handle and pull it back up.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you can do that literally.
Or
at
while you're moving.
drop of a hat.
Is that even?
Well,
you know?
there's
Yeah.
no restriction.
yeah.
It'd be how strong you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, at a certain speed to be
You
able
gotta
to
keep
fight
up
the
that
wind.
cost.
I
Yeah.
love that philosophy.
I love it.
It means you can close it in as long as it takes you to
Well,
pull
if
the
it
thing
starts,
shut.
and it starts raining, and you want to get it over as quickly as
Or you
possible.
accidentally drive into the M5 tunnel or something. You can
But it's
immediately
just-
pull it up. It's great.
It is the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that classic example where NASA spent so much money developing a ballpoint pen that would write upside down,
Yeah.
and the Russians used a pencil.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
it's
right.
just
Yeah.
do the thing that's
Yeah.
simplest.
But it reminds me a little bit of electric boots in cars. You know how you have these auto-closing boots now? I
Yeah.
always find myself
Yeah.
standing there thinking, I never used to spend 45 seconds waiting
Waiting
for a
for
boot
it
to
to
close.
shut.
I used to
Exactly.
just shut it. Has
And
this
then
made
if
my
you
life better or
accidentally
worse?
if something in its way, it'll go there, and then you go,
Yeah. Well, look, talking about something being accidentally in something else's way, it's time for MuskWatch. Now, first of all, we'll kick it off with, and a hat tip to CNBC here, that Elon Musk says computers will surpass us in, quote, every single way,
Okay.
unquote. All right? So at the World Artificial Intelligence Conference, who knew there was such a thing, in Shanghai on Wednesday, the dear leader debated the chairman of Alibaba, who is Jack Ma, and he said, on the whole AI thing, where's it going to go? So they had a to and fro on it.
Okay.
And Musk said, we will be far, far surpassed in every single way. I guarantee it. That's what Elon said. And he pointed to advances in chess and the Chinese board game Go as evidence of progress in AI.
That was
I
about
think it's
20
been
years
around
ago,
that,
wasn't it?
it's been around that level for quite a while, as far as I can remember. He said your cell phone could crush the world champion of chess, literally. So that conjures up vision of a
Literally.
massive phone just crushing the chess.
There's
world
another
champion.
person using literally in
Literally.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe
So-
one of those old Nokia 5110s
A
could
brick,
do it. Yeah.
just boom, Motorola. The first thing we should assume is we are very dumb, he
Yep.
said. We can definitely make things smarter than ourselves.
Yeah, fair enough.
To which,
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead. Jack Ma said, computers may be clever, but human beings are much smarter. We invented the computer. I've never seen a computer invent a human
That's
being.
possibly the worst offence I've ever heard in my life.
I know.
And alarmingly, this is one of the few times that I'm actually on Mr. Musk's
Musk's
side.
side.
Yeah.
That computers may never have the emotional intelligence of humans, but doesn't that make them more dangerous? If
Yeah.
we're building
Agreed.
these things that are
Exactly.
going to be
Agreed.
superior to us in
Yeah.
every way, why are we building
The
them?
development
Yeah.
of algorithms, you never know where things are going to go. It's entirely possible. So I'm on Elon's side
Yeah.
as well, I've got to say.
Yeah.
He did say in
Absolutely.
2017,
Yeah.
though, he suggested that competition among nations on AI would lead to World War III.
Yeah.
So
Oh, geez.
it's a fairly bad scenario as far as Elon's seeing it, but an interesting debate nonetheless.
Always a rosy outlook from
Yeah.
Mr. Musk, isn't it?
The other
something to look forward to.
big win, if anyone follows Elon and SpaceX on Twitter, this week SpaceX was testing, what they are doing is testing concepts and ideas behind their Starship program, which is the next big rocket.
Yep.
So a facility in southern Texas. And the multi-billion-dollar project includes a prototype rocket called the Starhopper.
Yep.
So this is just where they can put one engine in to see what's happening. And it's to test this Raptor engine, not the 2-litre turbo in the Ranger Raptor.
Can't do everything.
Raptor engine that will be propelling future spacecraft.
Okay.
Okay. For YouTube viewers, there'll be some footage behind us.
behind us, yeah.
It's experienced several problems, including some engine fires and some failures at liftoff, etc. But this week, successful 150-metre test flight, and the footage is amazing. It's this little thing. It looks a lot like R2-D2 from Star
Oh,
Wars.
yeah, really?
Vertical takeoff,
Yeah.
goes a little way, and then lands in this cloud of
Really?
dust.
Yeah.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
they're testing this engine and
Awesome.
little lateral
Yeah.
kind of
Boosters
stabilisation
or whatever,
rockets.
rocket boosters.
Yeah,
are there.
150 up or 150
metres
across?
across.
Oh, really?
So
Okay,
probably
yeah.
about the same.
Yeah,
up.
okay.
Yeah.
The only problem is there's around 1,500,000,000 metres to go.
Oh,
to
well,
Mars.
we're getting
So
there.
we're getting there.
No, but they've started.
Small steps, 150
The
metres.
journey
Give him-
of
give him
1,000
some
miles,
credit.
JC.
But it's great footage.
Starts
Now,
with a single.
the other thing
rocket
is
boost.
Rocket launch.
people will be aware that a NASA astronaut has been accused of the first crime in space.
Ah, yeah, I did read
All
about
right?
this.
So this person's name is Anne McLean, and she was accused by her estranged spouse of signing into that person's bank account from a NASA-affiliated computer while she was on board the International Space Station.
Incredible.
So this could be the world's first
Moving some
space
funds.
crime.
Space fraud.
And
Wow.
Adlai Stevenson on Twitter came back to that and said, "I got to be honest, my money was on an Elon Musk pedo colony on Mars."
Oh, yeah.
And now people will remember the thanks pedo guy
The
Yeah.
tie
comment
diver.
on
Yeah.
Twitter from the dear leader.
Yeah.
Does he still want to die on Mars, JC?
He thinks that the people who first go to Mars should be prepared to die there.
But don't you think that for Elon, that's not a particularly lofty goal? Dying on Mars is very easy.
it is very easy.
The hard part is living on
Well,
Mars.
living
he
on
also
Mars, yeah.
he also says that people who undertake the ambition to go to Mars should be ready to die in doing so.
Does he mention
So
how
it's
quickly
a-
that'll
It's a
happen?
risky undertaking. I don't know. So look, the share price $215, down $5 on last week.
Okay.
So just a small drop. But Mika Hugelshofer has a counter on the dear leader. And it's now 208 days since he said Tesla would likely be cash flow positive in all quarters going forward. So 208 days, and that's not the case.
Not yet.
Prices for Tesla vehicles set to rise in China. We're aware of that. Tesla's also launched an insurance offering for its own products in California only, which is another roll of the dice. You know, insurance is a dicey business.
Yeah.
If pardon me, sorry about that pun.
Jeez.
If you haven't been there before. So this is what Tesla's positioning it as, a competitively priced insurance offering designed to provide Tesla owners with up to 20% lower rates and in some cases as much as 30%. So this is another, hey, we're promising big. The company has access to reams of data that each one produces, they know how Teslas are built, they know what goes into them, they know how they perform in different circumstances.
And how they're being
but
driven.
the company emphatically says, we're not tracking owners. No, this is not tracking data, so that's fair enough.
Like Mercedes-Benz.
Tesla says the company's advanced safety features such as autopilot also contribute to the lower cost. So keep an eye on whether or not that is successful for them.
JC, can I ask you a quick local Tesla question? Did I read that Tesla is, I think I read it on CarsGuide, in fact, .com.au, that is. I'll say it again, carsguide.com.au, that Tesla had halved the local warranty as
That's
well
right.
from 8 years to
there is a
4
story.
years.
So there it is.
Yeah, wow.
Yes, and I don't know what's behind that at this
Interesting.
point. Whether it was too many claims, was draining the kitty, who knows? But that is the case.
I just want to dive in. I mean, we have a good-natured digger, the old Muscarelli. Call up Elon if you want to have a chat to us, or email us. Remember to read carsguide.com.au. We have
Crafty,
we
come
have a
back
dig
to
at
us.
him.
Come back to us.
We have a dig at him, but you've got to give the guy and his company some credit because they are really rattling the cage.
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot
absolutely.
of things that you can take away from it, and he's a quirky personality.
Sure.
There's no doubt about that. But these guys are really shaking up the entire landscape. You know, vehicles, space travel, everything.
I had my first crack in a Tesla Model 3 Performance the other day, and yes, I will concede that not all elements of that car are perfect, but my gosh, the acceleration is unbelievable.
The technology
Unbelievable.
is incredible,
Yeah.
isn't it?
I think anyone who's disrupting an established market
Good on 'em.
is up there, and they're putting themselves out there. We're just having a crack.
Yeah, no, absolutely,
But we are not denigrating the massive achievements and that disruption, which has changed people's
And also, you
appreciation.
put yourself out there. You've got to be ready for your haters and the people that are questioning your
Yeah, that's
ideas
right.
and your
Yeah.
approach
Crafty,
and whatever else. But good on him.
In much the same way that I said before, Ram has kind of been the canary for big trucks in Australia. I will always credit Tesla with doing what I at one point thought was absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
That was making electric cars cool. They were the least cool things on earth. They were Crocs and socks for years and years.
Absolutely.
And now you've
And then
got
the S came along and away you go.
e-tron, the Merc,
The EQC.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
So-
Yeah.
they're all piling in.
Absolutely.
So it's a major achievement. You're right,
Absolutely.
Crafty. Well said. And with that, we have reached the finish line.
Jeez,
Thank you,
that went
Chesto.
quick.
Just like that. Thank you.
And thank you, Crafty.
No, thank you.
And many thanks to Mr. Pritchard for his behind-the-scenes brilliance. And as a professional wrestling devotee, it's great to see him in his Luca Libre outfit today.
it is.
I think his ring name is Super Gallo d'Oro, which means Super Golden Chicken. It's
His
quite
what
an
name? Sorry,
Terrifying.
his what name?
His ring name.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yes, that's right.
I've also got to say thanks to to Pritchard because he was out on the drive the other day. He embraced the clothing optional.
Yeah.
Got a little bit sunburnt.
Yeah.
A
Yes.
little bit sunburnt.
Yeah.
But we had to slather him up with the reef oil, the suntan oil later
Yeah,
on.
absolutely.
Hawaiian Tropic, I think
But
it was.
and he's
Coconut
still,
butter.
and God bless him, God bless Pritchard, he still insisted on doing the Van Damme splits with no clothing on.
Good,
It was
unbelievable.
pretty rocky
Amazing.
there,
Absolutely
and a couple of
incredible.
prickles.
It's confronting.
Yeah,
like
so,
that.
couple of prickles.
I saw a side of Pritchard that I've never seen before.
You might have seen a couple of prickles.
Quite possibly never want to see again unless I subscribe to his blog.
Please pass on the word about the podcast and let us know your thoughts by searching for CarsGuide on Facebook and Instagram using the hashtag CGPodcast, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. If you're an iTunes listener, please rate and review us, and remember you can watch us on YouTube.
Elon Musk, get in touch.
Until next week, I need to share. I come from a broken home.
Mm-hmm.
Our eldest daughter reversed into it this morning.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
See you next time.
Hooroo. You're a shocker. Good stuff.